So I wanted to do a little bit more of an in-depth discussion on the rainwater harvesting pond that I've built here in my backyard. So back at the end of last year, we were faced with a couple of pretty strong hurricanes, and in this area, the yard um, tended to flood quite a bit at the end of the rainy season, and I wanted to mitigate as much flooding as possible. So we had this pool that we had received for the kids a few years back, and it was kind of on its last legs, had some holes in it, and uh, so I set it up as cheaply as I could before the first hurricane, and put up some gutters that I had up on this short section of roof, and all I had was some leftover 4-inch irrigation pipe or corrugated pipe, and I just put that into the pool and kind of hope for the best. And fortunately or unfortunately, we missed a good portion of the hurricanes, and they went further south than us, and we did get quite a bit of rain, but it wasn't nearly as bad as after that hurricane rain. It pretty much got all the way up to that filter hole, and slowly receded. And you can kind of see how the water level has changed a little bit. But right now, that's because of irrigation. But you see those little rings on the side. But after those initial big rains, the water level dropped pretty considerably, and I knew there were some holes in this pond, and it just slowly drained out. Water drained out. I was deciding on whether I wanted to patch the holes or just see if the pond would naturally glee up the holes and with biological material. And so I threw in, well, I didn't throw in, I let the sycamore that this pond is under, let the leaves fall in, and threw in some biochar and some lactic acid bacteria that I cultivated, and just let it go. And the water through the winter stayed pretty clear and pretty low level, and there were some goldfish in there that survived through the winter and got some ice, and nothing was really affected poorly. And then after spring came, the algae got really, really bad, and I was like, well, do I filter it out or try and clean it out some? And I decided to just let it go, do its own thing. And we got a couple pretty big rains, and I realized that the water level wasn't dropping anymore. I presume the hole was up near this top end. This pond is on a slightly downhill slope, and I really do need to relocate it and put it on level ground and kind of finish it up. But the hole was up there because the water level didn't recede past that level. But I just let it go, and water level kept rising, and it doesn't rise past that point because those are outlets and they drain out on the far side. But this water does hold, or this pool does hold about 1,000 gallons when totally full. So I would say it's a little over 500 gallons right now. And I noticed there was some more biology coming in, and so I was like, okay, well, it's time to add some plants. But I wanted to add some plants that would be beneficial for me, for the garden, for food, but didn't really know how to go about creating a floating planter that wasn't going to hold mosquito larvae. So these were some of the first iterations that I had ideas about, some floating contraption with a pot and some sort of ballast and root holding material, which in here is just some river rock. But like I thought, these kind of containers do contain mosquito larvae, and those goldfish that I have in here can't get to the larvae to eat them. So it's just kind of a mosquito breeding ground. So this was one of the other iterations, and I know it needs to be prettified a little bit. It's pretty ugly, but this is something that works. And I've got some banana pups in here in some mesh bags with some compost, and they're thriving in these conditions. And all it is some recycled bottles and some wire mesh and some lattice, kind of all zip tied together. But it works. And one of my first ideas was to use a pool noodle, kind of hold some of this water taro in there, and it works. It's just, again, not very pretty. So I'll be working on this idea a little bit more. I also threw in some pennywort to kind of clear up some of the nutrient in there. But another thing I noticed, as the temperatures rose, the water was getting clear, and you can kind of see it where this corrugated pipe, you can see the bottom of it, where before it was just in a complete opaque green. So clearly there's some biology working in there now, and we'll see what comes of it, through the summer months, now that we're entering into the rainy season. But you can see all sorts of water skimmer bugs all over, and I've seen some frog eggs floating on the surface, but I presume the fish are eating them, because I haven't seen any tadpoles in the pond yet. But I did see the other day a fish that I did not put in here. 2 fish, actually, and they were tiny, 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 but they were floating right on top of the lattice, so you could just barely see them. And I'm not sure what they are. I'm not sure where they came from. I have no idea how they got in here. I don't think that they are goldfish, but I have no idea. It is beyond reason for me to explain that there is some fish living in here that I did not put in here. So it's just been a fun experiment. It's really expensive to put together a rainwater harvesting system, but if you can have something beautiful like this, something that, even if you bought this new, it's only a few $100s, and you can hold 1,000 gallons of water to irrigate your yard or your garden. And even if you really clean it up and pass it through some pretty good filtration, you could drink it in an emergency. So overall, I love my pond, and it is one of the greatest builds that I've had in our permaculture suburban yard that I've ever made, and it was so simple. All I had to do was kind of let nature take its course, and it just works. I don't feed the goldfish in there. The goldfish feed themselves on mosquito larvae and whatever other insects find their way in there. And I really don't have that big of a mosquito problem. And I know it's just early in the season, and rainy season's coming, so we'll see overall how it works out. But I'm really pleased with the pond, and it's provided non-chlorinated water irrigation for the garden, which is far superior than using the city water. So I encourage others to build their own ponds, and there's a book called Building a Natural Pond, and I forget the author's name, but I know it's available on Hoopla to read, and that's where you learned a lot of this stuff about ponds. And basically the idea is, you've got your holding source, you've got your water source, and you provide areas for the biology to work. So one of his designs was putting an old carpet at the bottom for a lot of the bacteria and biology to cultivate in, and then providing plants on the surface to to take care of the excess nutrient to keep the oxygen levels high, and adding a small amount of fish, not a large amount of fish, um, to make sure that the nutrient load in the pond doesn't get too high. So there are some good lessons that I learned in that book and applied to this pond. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you think I can improve it. I know it certainly could be prettier, and one day I would like to make a more permanent installation, maybe using like an earth bag technique with maybe some earthen uh, you know what's it called, mortar, or some surface, water impermeable surface over it, just to make a pretty pond for my wife. But right now this is a great addition to the yard, and hope it gets better over time.